Never trust a politician. Case in point, posh, fat, weaselly arsehole. You've guessed it, it's Boris Johnson. It's recently come out that after campaigning for Britain to leave the European Union, Boris Johnson had previously written an article for The Telegraph arguing in favour of staying in. Mr. Johnson claims that the article was a parody.
I thought I'd better see if I can make the alternative case for myself, so then I wrote a sort of semi-parodic article in the opposite sense, which has mysteriously found its way into the paper this morning, because I think I might have sent it to a friend. But I set them side by side, and it was blindingly obvious what the right thing to do was, and I think the people made the right decision.
Lest we should forget, let's remind ourselves of Mr. Johnson's stirring debate performance in the week leading up to the referendum.
If we vote leave, we can take back control of our borders, of huge sums of money, £10 billion a year net, of our tax-raising powers, of our trade policy, and of our whole law-making system, the democracy that is the foundation of our prosperity. And if we stand up for democracy, we will be speaking up for hundreds of millions of people around Europe who agree with us, but who currently have no voice. And if we vote leave and take back control, I believe that this Thursday can be our country's Independence Day.
On June 23rd, and against all the odds, Britain voted for its Independence Day. This is Boris, the day after. He must be so proud.
In voting to leave the EU, it is vital to stress that there is now no need for haste, and indeed, as the Prime Minister has just said, nothing will change over the short term, except that work will have to begin on how to give effect to the will of the people and to extricate this country from the supranational system. And as the Prime Minister has rightly said, there is no need to invoke Article 50.
Cheer up, Boris, you just made history. But you look like a broken man. What's happened? Your cunning plan's gone down the drain. You were going to sweep into power as the man who valiantly fought but narrowly failed to deliver Britain from the clutches of the European Union. And then, after all that bullshit about Britain leading the way and setting an example for the other EU members to follow, here he is, campaigning for Turkey's inclusion in the EU. Hey, good job, Boris. You're in the government now, you got to do what you're told. Atta good boy. So what is Boris's real opinion then? I don't think he has one. I think he's a complete blank slate and he can just magic up arguments as and when he needs them for whatever particular purpose. I mean, before the campaign actually started, everyone was wondering which way is Boris going to go? Which way is he going to go? And then it came as quite a surprise to most people, I think, that he actually decided to campaign for leave. Now, how can it be that from one day to the next, your opinions, such a prominent politician, your opinions aren't actually known on such an important topic? Now, not that it's really relevant here, but I actually voted to leave, and I never ever bought this act that Boris was putting on, not for 1 minute. In his university days, of course, Boris was infamously a member of the elitist Bullingdon Club at Oxford University, famous for trashing restaurants and throwing money around the place afterwards in an act of atonement. Boris's contemporaries in the Bullingdon Club include George Osborne, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and David Cameron, the former Prime Minister. And it was at Oxford University as president of the Oxford Debating Union that Johnson refined his debating skills. Now, guys, we're 1 foot in the rabbit hole here, so I'm going to turn to prolific writer and conspiracy researcher David Icke to give you a little perspective on the Oxford Debating Union. Quote, I remember the first time I debated there in 1989 as a national spokesman for the British Green Party, and I realised that the student members of the union draw lots to see if they will speak for or against the motion in question. It doesn't matter if they believe in the stance they have been drawn to take. Their job is to passionately sell their often manufactured beliefs, and I was amazed at how well they do it. Of course, this creates a wonderful training programme for would-be politicians who then go off to Parliament to lie, mislead and speak in favour of things they don't even support.
So this is the famous debating chamber of the Oxford Union. Normally in this area there's a lot more furniture, and the place is made to look very much like the House of Commons debating arena. And there have been debates going back to the early part of the 1800s, and some of the most famous politicians and people from other walks of life and fields of life have spoken here and debated here over the last, best part of 200 years now. Not just British politicians and British personalities, but American presidents like Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, and other famous American politicians like Robert Kennedy, and the seriously infamous Henry Kissinger. So it is a place where the great, the good, and the politically extremely ugly have performed and tried to persuade people to their point of view. And it's not just famous people that have debated in this chamber. Many famous politicians have actually been part of the Union and have gone on to greater things. So many major British politicians have been through this almost training ground on how to debate, not just debate on things that you believe in, but debate on things you don't believe in and still make people think that you're right, even though even you don't believe what you're saying. That's the art of debating that they learn here, and that they take that into the false world of politics.
Sound familiar, Mr. Johnson? Yeah. Well, this brings us to the bigger picture. Really, it's not about Boris. Yeah, he's a dickhead, an unprincipled wanker, but all of them are, essentially. There are no principles in politics. With hidden interests lurking behind basically every government policy, it is the job of people like Boris Blowjob here to implement them. Whatever the plan, they use their eloquence, their big words, their false compassion to sell it. The pharmaceutical industry, big agriculture, the military-industrial complex, Wall Street, the City of London. Their agents are the ones who we elect every 4 or 5 years at the ballot box. It's high time that we withdrew our consent from these people. It's time to disengage.